He's here.
I am!
I don't know why I made that. I thought it'd be cool. Here we are, sports fans. The last hurrah. The final ever episode of The Owl House. Watching and dreaming. And what do I really have to say about it? It's mad. It's insanely over the top. It's off the wall bonkers. It's ridiculous. And it's amazing. It somehow simultaneously wasn't what I expected at all, wasn't what I wanted really, and also exactly what I wanted and didn't disappoint me in any way. Or maybe that's just a smart way of covering up that I don't actually know what to say. Watching and Dreaming is a little rough, and it's hardly the best episode of the show, but it is without a doubt the best finale that I could have asked for. So let's just get right into it. No more vague summing up, let's dive right into it because we have got a lot to cover here. Also, episodes 1 and 2 were originally taken down, but now the entirety of Season 3 is now available for free here on YouTube over on the Disney Channel. Links are in the description. Alright, now let's start, for real. Okay, so right off the bat, I am so glad that the whole nightmare mind games thing was not the main bulk of the episode, because it did seem like it was going to be from that trailer, but actually it was only the very opening sequence of the episode. I mean, hell, it's over before the episode title even shows up on screen. Don't get me wrong, it's a great opening, but the reason that I'm glad it wasn't a big chunk of the episode is because I really didn't want them to just keep delaying the reunion of Luce, Ida, and King. Like I said in the last video, the three of them have not been all together since the very beginning of Clouds on the Horizon. I mean, King was with Luce from that point up until the end of King's Tide, and then presumably has been with Ida since shortly after that. And Luce did briefly see King in the last episode, but he didn't see her. So that emotional reunion does feel very earned, and I'm so glad that the three of them at least spend a majority of this episode all together. And I was originally a little let down by how little... I think people have been referring to them as the Hex Squad, you know, Amity, Willow, Gus, and Hunter, so I'm just going to go with that. How little the Hex Squad had to do in this episode. I mean, they're part of Luce's nightmare thing at the start, and again, that whole bit is really good, but, you know, they don't really do a whole lot else aside from rescuing some people in the archives during the final battle. But honestly,
That's fine.
especially considering how much of the first two episodes of the season have focused on them, I really don't mind the finale primarily being about Luce, Ida, and King. And you know, they do all appear very heavily at the end, but I'm going to get onto that later on. And speaking of the nightmare sequence, it isn't exactly made clear how much of it comes from, you know, Belos's knowledge of the three of them, or the stories that King told the Collector about the three of them. It's probably a mixture of both, because I don't think that Belos knew about the Titan Trappers, but the Collector obviously did. And likewise, I don't think the Collector knew about Luce's insecurities about helping Belos, but Belos clearly did. But what is made clear is just how much Belos completely overlooked and ignored King. One interesting detail that I haven't really heard anyone else bring up is during Ida's nightmare, she says,
"If you think you can keep me from my family, you got another thing coming."
At which point Lilith shows up with Gwendolyn and later on Del and says,
"We're all present and accounted for."
which yes, that is technically true. This is everyone in Ida's biological family. But notice no mention of King. In the eyes of Belos and or the Collector as well, King isn't seen as part of Ida's family, and I just thought that was a really neat detail that kind of gives you a real glimpse into Belos's mindset. Well, I mean, no more than we already knew about him, I suppose, but still, it's little things like that that do add up and make you realize that these are really well thought out characters. God, I'm going to miss the show. But obviously the big one here is that Belos genuinely had no idea that King was a Titan. The Collector offhandedly mentioning that and how he can do nothing to King because he's a Titan is what gives Belos the idea to then go and possess the Boiling Isles Titan, thereby eliminating the Collector as an obstacle in his way, which makes sense.
Those eyes. Don't tell me it's...
And it was great to see them elaborate a bit more on the whole still beating heart of the Titan, which was established all the way back in Season 1. I'm guessing that it was kept beating so that the Titan couldn't properly pass on, because if he did, it would mean that the glyphs would stop working like they do by the end of this episode, meaning Belos would lose his power, and so he kept it going and then built his castle around it. But honestly, it just kind of makes me wonder what Belos' plan was in this episode before realizing that he could possess the Titan. Was he just kind of making it up as he went along? I don't know. What was the point of the nightmare sequence anyway? Convincing the Collector to go play with them all in person makes sense because that's a distraction so that Belos can go and possess the Titan. But he didn't come up with that idea until after the three of them had already broken out of their nightmares. So what was the purpose of doing that in the first place? Was he just buying time, or did he just like torturing them for a bit? Again, I really do like the nightmare sequence. It's really good. I just don't see what its purpose in the story is, you know? I don't know, maybe someone can enlighten me in the comments. I suppose with Luce knowing in the back of her mind that none of it is real, and then eventually breaking out of it with the glyphs, does show that she's no longer so easily fooled by Belos' mind tricks now, so that is something which definitely comes back to bite him at the end of the episode. Like I said, this episode is a little rough, especially in the first half. After the nightmare stuff and then the reunion, we quickly go from that to the Collector's games, and then we quickly go from that to the whole trip down memory lane bit, before immediately moving on to Belos possessing the Titan and that whole shindig unfolds. What on earth did I just say? I get that all of these parts do serve a purpose, but it did kind of feel like the episode needed 21 minutes to actually find its footing, you know? The Collector's Games part was probably the most out of place one of them. Can't say I was the biggest fan of that whole sequence.
Why do you choose these itty-bitty spiders over me?
Because you're gay.
But I like that it does make the Collector stop and question why exactly forcing people to play his games might not be as enjoyable to them as it is to him. As I've said before, he just lacks a sense of empathy. Despite likely existing for thousands of years, he is just a child. I think one of the biggest complaints I've heard about the Collector is that the original Shadow Collector and the now physical form Collector feel like two completely different characters. And yeah, I know that I said I didn't like the Collector as they were first shown to us. It wasn't really until the ending of King's Tide that I did a complete 180 on them. And it wasn't until this moment in this episode that I understood exactly why that was.
And everyone nearly died from the draining spell.
So? Toys break all the time. You just fix them.
This isn't somebody who just treats life like a game. This is someone who actually thinks that life is a game. To them, it's not, I don't care about the consequences. It's, there are no consequences. And that is a very big difference. And it kind of harkens back to the overall theme of this show that I talked about all the way back in my very first Owl House video nearly 2 years ago. The distinction between fantasy and reality. Life isn't a fairy tale. And sometimes you need to get your head out of the clouds and face the real world. It's what the Owl House is about, and it's so nice to see that come full circle and be a pretty big theme in the finale. And I've got to give credit to Frida Wolf here as well, voicing the Collector, and really managing to sell that this is a deeply upset child and not have it sound like a whiny tantruming brat. I mean, that couldn't have been easy.
But I showed all of them! Even when those trapper jerks started acting weird, even when Belos lied to me! I found King! I found the last Titan, and he's my friend now!
Collector.
I know it's just pretend! I don't care! I'll pretend as long as I want!
But that's not what you want, is it?
What do you know?
We know what it's like to feel alone.
And abandoned. And misunderstood.
God, that's perfect. I did like the whole memory photos bit as well. I probably would have appreciated it a little bit more had I not rewatched the entire show from the beginning prior to watching this, but it is very fitting for the final episode to do something like this. And it also makes logical sense that Luce would have these photos as she got them in the last episode, so yeah, that's good, that makes sense. Although, thinking about it even more, that's also really stupid, Luce, to take them out of the photo classroom. I mean, what if they got damaged? We don't want another Understanding Willio situation. Okay, yeah, I did write that bit in just so that I can say Understanding Willio one more time. It's the final episode, let me have this. Anyway, Luce says that people are complex and sometimes they just need a little kindness and forgiveness. But the key word there is sometimes. And the big mistake that the Collector makes is thinking that that can apply to anyone. But there are some people who are just simply beyond redemption to the point where it's futile to even try. And Belos is one of those people. I do love that throughout the course of this whole show, right up until the very end, despite all the people who started off as hostile or did bad things that eventually got redeemed and became better people, Belos never got better, never redeemed himself, never even tried. And because of that, the collector's attempt to reach out to him and forgive him is actually presented as the wrong thing to do, because it's never gonna work for someone like him. And I really love this show for not going with the message that kindness solves everything, because that's not reality. That is fantasy. And that mistake is what leads into the first of 3 moments in this episode that made me cry. The quote-unquote death of Luce. And I've really got to applaud the writers and creators of this show for coming so very close to making me actually believe that Luce was dead for real. It didn't get there, but it was very close. But I mean, we all knew she wasn't going to actually die for real. I mean, obviously something would happen and she would come back. But oh my god, the scene still hits you really hard with it anyway. I think just the combination of the collector innocently wondering where she went and naively thinking that he can just bring her back, and then just seeing King and Ida just standing there in total shock, not saying a word, not even blinking. It's like real gut-punching stuff, and I hate it, and I love it. And then them cutting over to the Hex Squad, and you just see Camila in puppet form crying. Like, did she somehow know? I don't know. I mean, later on, once the others have freed her, she seems convinced that Luce is okay and encourages them all to help free everyone in the archives, but she's still wiping away tears from her eyes, so I'm not really sure what the takeaway from that is. I mean, I suppose maybe you could see it as she does believe that Luce will come back, or maybe she's just making sure the Hex Squad don't completely lose faith. I genuinely don't know. But obviously Luce does find a way back, with a little help from the Titan. Yes, the Titan. After all this time, we finally get to see him, or at least this sort of sentient form of him. And I guess that means that this is who Luce saw right at the beginning of the last episode. It wasn't King. I mean, I like that Luce also thought it was King at first, but no, it was King's dad, who's just been here this whole time, keeping an eye on his son. I love that. I love the fact that the Titan was built up to be this like big, merciless, vengeful god kind of creature, and was used by Belos to create a world of fear and strict obedience. And then he's just this chill dude who's just hanging out here with a Bad Girl Coven t-shirt and a hootie worm in his eye. Also, he's voiced by Aaron Hansen, so that's pretty cool.
Hey, I'm Grump. I'm not so Grump.
But yeah, I really do like this whole scene as Luce grapples with the moral question of intention versus consequence. If we have good intentions to help people, but end up hurting people, are we bad people? Luce's actions led to people getting hurt, and Belos's actions led to people getting hurt, but in both of their respective minds, they were acting in good faith. So what's the difference? And I think it's made pretty clear that the difference is Luce's actions were selflessly motivated. Belos was nothing but selfish. He simply wanted to be seen as the hero, and he didn't care at all about how many people he had to hurt to get that. But Luce only ever had good intentions, and clearly the guilt of her actions causing untold hurt is something that's been weighing her down ever since. Good intentions will usually bring about good consequences, but sometimes unforeseen bad ones too. But bad intentions will almost always lead to bad consequences. So all we can really do is just help out where we can and strive to keep doing our best. And I really love the idea that the Titan made it easy for Luce to find the glyphs and then ultimately gives his last remaining power over to her. Again, not because she's like the one destined to save the world, but just because she was kind to his son.
I was able to birth children in my cavity.
Okay, yeah, so Luce comes back, and she's now infused with the Titan's power, and she looks like this, which is a really cool design, and it somehow suits Luce perfectly as well. And then the final battle against Belos begins. As a bit of a side note, someone else I really want to give special attention to is Rain's voice actor, Avi Roque. Yes, I learned how to pronounce their name. Because I'll be honest, I don't mean to be harsh with this, but like, I've never really been a big fan of their voice acting for Rain. Especially in some of their earliest appearances, it does kind of sound like someone reading from a script, which is why their performance in this episode surprised me so much. And not only as Rain, but as Belos in Rain's body. It's like weirdly creepy despite coming from Rain's voice. You can definitely hear the difference when it's actually Belos speaking. Avi absolutely killed it in this episode. And yeah, I suppose it's just a result of the actors getting more familiar with their roles, because I think the same thing happened with Willow in some of the earlier Season 1 episodes. But yeah, in this episode, she killed it. I mean, everyone killed it, really. There isn't a single bad performance across this entire episode. And I like how powerful Rain is demonstrated to be in this episode too. I mean, not only breaking free of Belos's possession, but also out of the Collector's puppet form while being possessed by Belos. Jesus Christ, Rain. I mean, the only other time we've seen anyone overpower the Collector's magic is by using glyphs, which is obviously Titan magic. You know, Titan magic cancels out Collector magic, that's been established. And then Rain's just out here breaking free through sheer willpower. That's insane. And something that took me several rewatches to notice for some reason was the sort of like discoloration scarring on Rain's face as a result of being possessed by Belos, which is exactly what happened to Hunter as well. I mean, that's just a bit of cool detail, I like that. And it was nice to see them helping out in the final battle as well. So basically the final battle is, in essence, the Titan versus the Titan. Is really weird. It's a human with the body of the Titan versus a human with the powers of that same Titan. And the Titan's son, who is also a Titan, is there too. It's very ridiculous, but I love it. The whole fight sequence is beautifully animated all throughout. I love all of it. I love Ida helping Luce with the spell circle. I love King and Luce both doing the wear thing. It's so cool seeing Luce using her staff properly. It's a shame that we didn't get to see more of Stringbean in the show, but I do love that she's just there, making this same doofy face throughout this whole episode. I mean, I guess she's like less than a day old. But anyway, it's all just such an amazingly climactic end to the episode and to the show. I really loved this one particular moment where it cuts from Belos in the heart to the Dragon Monster Castle thing, and then zooming out of the Titan skull with that one hand reaching up like some last-ditch attempt to hang on. That's such an epic visual. I love that so much. And then Luce just flipping grabs him by the fucking ribcage and rips him out of the heart. It's unbelievably awesome. Yeah, it's really over the top, but it just works. It's great. And yeah, as me and many others predicted, we did get a now eat this sucker callback, because, I mean, really, how could they not? How could they not? And while all that's going on, the Collector, for probably the first time in their long existence, does something completely selfless and helps. And I really, really like that moment. For someone who was treated unfairly for most of their life, I mean, not even counting the hundreds of years spent with Belos, who never did anything selflessly, I mean, that certainly couldn't have helped. But it was just so great that he came to this realization on his own after experiencing first-hand grief over Luce's death, not even really understanding what it was at the time. But as the Boiling Isles starts literally moving, and then the Hex Squad can't single-handedly protect everyone in the archives, the Collector, knowing that they can't physically hurt Belos, and then slowly getting consumed by his Titan form, just steps up and saves everyone. And it's great. It's such a great moment. And then even after all of that, he still doesn't expect thanks or forgiveness. It's just such a nice, heartwarming conclusion to this roller coaster of a character. Admittedly, yeah, I was very off the mark with the whole Camila Collector prediction that I talked about last time, but I genuinely think that this moment might have been a little more impactful if it was Camila who reached out to him instead of Amity. But, you know, that's just a minor nitpick. But seriously, I mean, tell me that wouldn't have been better. But what was absolutely perfect, and arguably the best scene of the whole episode, was the super cathartic final moments of Belos. I am so glad that they did this and didn't just end it with him getting ripped out of the heart, because this is too perfect. Even after all of that, Emperor Belos just falls back on his go-to tactic of manipulation. He manipulated so many people into doing what he wanted. You know, Lilith, Hunter, the residents of the Boiling Isles multiple times over, the Collector, even Luce, something that's haunted her mind ever since. But this time, it doesn't work. Not even a little bit. He tries to claim that he was inflicted with a curse that forced him to do terrible things, and she just stares him down and doesn't say a word. And then the boiling rain starts, and his barely held together physical form starts to melt away, and Luce doesn't even flinch. And then he tries to appeal to her sense of morality and good nature. You know, she wouldn't just let him die. And then he devolves into his hatred and bigotry towards witches and basically begs her to help. And she says nothing. And it's perfect. And then she walks away and Ida, King, and Rain come over and stomp on him a bit, so that was pretty funny.
Ew, it's on my claws!
So really, I've got to go back on myself here. I'd said that Belos' defeat in King's Tide was the best way to end his story. The best death for his character. And because of that, I wasn't thrilled that they brought him back. But no, I was wrong. I was so wrong. This was the best way. This moment was literally the perfect end to Emperor Belos. Good flippin' riddance. And now we come to the last part of the episode, and there's honestly just way too much to talk about in this entire section. I've rewatched it so many times over now, way more than any other part of the episode, and there's still little things in it that I didn't notice, just crammed in there. It's so great, and it's such a perfect close-off to Watching and Dreaming and to the Owl House itself. I love everyone reuniting with their loved ones, and Odalia's also there, and Hunter thinking that there's no one for him until Darius and Eberwolf show up, and he starts enthusiastically talking about his wolf shirt that he made. It's so cute. Also, hugs for Steve. Yeah, all hail Steve. Ida and King meeting Camila played out almost exactly how I thought it would, and I kind of wish that I'd said this beforehand because I knew exactly how it was going to play out. I knew that Ida would be all nervous and go in for a handshake or something, and then Camila would just pull her in for a big hug. That's exactly what happened. I did think there'd be dialogue, obviously, but still, it was exactly how I imagined it. And then Hootie being freed and reuniting with Lilith was great. I mean, there have been so many great Hootie faces in this entire show. This one is definitely at the top of the list. It was a bit strange that he doesn't have any lines in this episode, though, as people have pointed out. I mean, unless you count the group bye at the end. But, I mean, they could have at least had him say something funny about the Pinata. I don't know, that would have sufficed. I mean, hell, the Matty Man got a line in this episode, but Hootie didn't. Kind of weird. And also, I adore the idea of King letting the Collector keep Francois so he won't feel alone. That's so flippin' adorable. And then, obviously, there's the time skip extended credits sequence. And again, there's really just way too much to mention. Also, Disney uploaded a no-text version recently, so yeah, boom, I can use that for the footage here. Ha! The benefits of taking about a month to make one of these, I guess. But, I mean, everyone's new designs, Hunter carving Palisman like he wanted, the Hex Squad having matching Flapjack tattoos is so cool, and the gravestone for Flapjack, which is just beautiful. That was the second of the 3 times that I cried. And honestly, it still kind of makes me a bit emotional seeing that. I didn't cry when he actually died, but yeah, the gravestone gets me, of course. Amity's cat abomination ship thing, Lilith's harpy form, and the healers and the abomination witches successfully finding a way to remove sigils. The fact that the guy who gets his removed is the same guy from Convention, the first time we ever saw anyone get a sigil. This? Rain's Fox Palisman, the Slither Beasts, the Selkie-Domuses, Selkie-Domi, and Gus running the Demon Realm, Human Realm University Exchange Program thing, which V is also a part of, which makes so much sense because she's lived in both realms. And, of course, Ida's the headmaster of the university, and she's got a cool hook hand, and King's grown bigger, and he now has his own form of glyphs. It's all so great. It's too much. There's too much to talk about. And, of course, this whole sequence is building up to them all celebrating Luce's Quinceañera, which is so cool. Because I remember that Dana Terrace mentioned a while back that they'd planned to do an episode with Luce's Quinceañera, but obviously they couldn't after the whole, show being cut short thing. So it was really nice for them just to be able to do that a little bit here at the end. It's great. It's also great. It's such a well-earned, amazing end to this amazing show. And as soon as it came to the end, that was the third of the 3 times. But where was Jean-Luc? What happened to Jean-Luc? I have to know! Okay, so now we're going to move into the final section of this video where I kind of sum up my thoughts on the show somewhat. I don't know. This whole bit, I'm not reading from a script. I don't have a script in front of me right now. This is all, well, shall we say, from the heart. That was pretty good. I didn't want to write a script for this bit because, honestly, I don't know how to put into words my thoughts on this show and how it has impacted me and how it's impacted so many people. It's too difficult to even... See, I really just don't have the words. The Owl House has been such an interesting experience because, obviously, it's a show that I really like. I don't think I could possibly make that any clearer. But the strange thing about it is that the way I feel about the Owl House is so different to the way I've felt about any other piece of media that I really like. And it's so hard to describe why that is. It's so hard to describe exactly what I mean by that. It's so difficult to explain, and some of you will have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, but I think there will be some of you who know exactly what I'm talking about. Before I randomly decided to start watching this show and then saw it through to the end and became so attached to it, this is 100% honest here, I genuinely didn't know and didn't believe that it was possible to have such like a visceral connection to a piece of fiction. Because like, I like a lot of stuff, right? I like a lot of films, I like a lot of shows, I like a lot of games, but none of them really compare to the way I like the Owl House. And that's not me saying that I like the Owl House more than I like anything else. It's just, it's such a different feeling. It feels almost like a more personal connection rather than just an appreciation for a piece of media. This show has so unexpectedly impacted me as a person. And it's so weird because I didn't think that was possible. It consumes my thoughts after every new episode airs for several weeks until I make these videos, which is why I have to make these videos. Until I get these thoughts out, it's all I can think about. Which is so weird because it's just a Disney show. Like, why is it so... Why is there such a connection there? I don't know how to describe it. So, in the end, I really can't sum up my thoughts on the Owl House. I really love it. Like I said, before I watched this final episode, I binged watched the entire series over the course of 2 weeks. Best decision I've ever made. I still love it. I still love it. It still has such an effect on me. It made me really appreciate Season 1 as well, because I think I've badmouthed Season 1 way more than it's deserved, because Season 1 is really good. There is a lot to enjoy in Season 1. Admittedly, yeah, it does have a little bit of a dip in quality around the middle, but there is still a lot to enjoy in Season 1. Stuff that you can't really get in Season 2 or 3. They're all very different seasons. And, you know, you can objectively say that Season 2 is, like, the best. It has so much good stuff in it. But there is a lot to appreciate in Season 1 as well. And then Season 3 is just kind of its own beast. And it's ridiculous, but it's also just so good. It's all so good. It's not the best show I've ever seen, obviously, but it means more to me than any other show I've seen. I think that's the best way to put it. Because there's a lot of shows like The Owl House. There have been a lot of shows like The Owl House. And I'm sure in the future there will be more shows like The Owl House. But there will never be another Owl House. So I hope you've enjoyed. For the few, how many views do these videos get? Like maybe a couple thousand at best. But all of you who are here, I really appreciate you watching these, and I hope you've enjoyed them somewhat. As for the future, this won't be the last Owl House thing you'll see on this channel. It will be the last of these types of videos, but I do have some things planned. Unfortunately, not more Foul House. I think that's run its course with the 5 episodes, and I really don't think I need to make any more. I don't really want to make any more. I know a lot of you would really like to see more, but I think the 5 episodes as they stand, that's all I'm putting forward for that. But one thing that I would really like to make, and one thing that I've wanted to make for a really long time, is a top 10 fight scenes video, which I've already got like the top 10 in my head of exactly what I want them to be. So, that's something that I might do a little later this year. And then the other thing, which is sort of like, I'm sort of going back and forth as to whether or not this is a good idea, but I kind of want to do like one of those like music video thingamajigs where you like have the music and you put the clips from the show and stuff like that. I don't know, it's very, like cringy teenager type YouTube, but I don't know. If anyone's like down for that, then yeah, I would totally do that because I have a song in mind. If you'd be down for that, I'd happily do that. And I will do the top 10 fight scenes as well. But anyway, I've been rambling for way too long now. Crash Back in Time video, where I play your levels, should be out sometime this month. Mitchell's collab should be out sometime this month. And then, obviously, June is Crash Mind of a Mutant. Every other day from June 1st to June 19th. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then June 20th, Crash Team Rumbles comes out. So, yeah, I guess that's it. So, thank you all for watching these videos. I hope you've enjoyed them. And show may be over, but, it's still there. It's not gone. is still a great show, and I would still recommend you watch it. If for some reason you're watching this and you haven't seen it, then what the hell are you doing? Get out of here!